Welcome to the Shanghai Lecture once again. Welcome to the Global Virtual Lecture Hall. Let's hope that technology is now more friendly towards us than it was before. So once again, welcome. And today's program was slightly delayed by about 1 hour, which of course, for Swiss, this is an awful thing, to happen. So let me start with the goals that we have with this lecture series. So it's one of the, let's say, romantic goals is to make education and knowledge available to anyone on the planet, maybe also to universities and places that are not as well off as, for example, Zurich, University of Zurich. We want to exploit latest technology for knowledge transfer and community building. This is why we have this video conferencing. We also have collaborative environments to really build a global community. Then we would like to spread the idea of embodied intelligence, which is the main topic of this class, or natural and artificial intelligence. And I think this idea of embodied intelligence really needs to a new way of thinking. So it's not only a technical thing, but I think it's also, if you like, it's a philosophical way of approaching difficult, hard problems. And then we want to study the way people collaborate. So we basically are using this as a research platform. We like to strengthen ties between universities. There is already, because this is the 4th time that we're doing the ShanghAI Lectures. We started in 2009, so this is the 4th time. Many universities are already now collaborating at this level, and we know the people there, and so there is a community of universities emerging here. And then one of the things is also, I would like you to have an informed opinion on media reports. Now, there is typically a lot of hype in the media about technological developments. For example, like just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, that the governor of California signed a bill that now driving without people, fully automated driving is an okay thing. Of course, there is a certification procedure, but now it's no longer the case that there always has to be a human in the loop. And the Google car, the Google autonomous car, has been driving now for almost 500,000 kilometers without a single accident. So I think, which is I think a significant achievement. Okay, expected results. Interactions with important universities from around the world. You will get to know these universities, in Russia, in China, in Japan, in Australia, in Germany, all over the place. A global new collaboration, a global exchange with renowned researchers with different backgrounds. So the format, I will say a bit more about that, is going to be that typically every week I will do the first hour so that we have continuity and, sort of make progress in the materials. And then the second hour we have 2 guest lectures, short guest lectures by well-known people in the field, so that you can also hear their perspective on these issues. And I think it will give you a new view of intelligence, a new view of ourselves and of the world. I was asked also during the break, what about programming? There may be some people who don't have a lot of programming skills. The lecture series is actually for a very interdisciplinary audience, also psychologists, philosophers, economists. I think it'll be, or biologists. It will be for an interdisciplinary audience, and you shouldn't have any problems actually following it. You don't need any prior training. It's more about ideas rather than technicalities. But we will do exercises, and in the exercises you can sort of get a bit of the technological training. Now, this is the table of contents. I'm not going to go through it. I will just go through that. So there is a book for the class, which is, I think, which you probably want to get, because I'm going to follow that, and also because the time in the video conference is very limited. I think you're going to have to do quite a bit of additional reading in addition to what we do right here. And so I will say, please read chapters 1 and 2 in the book, and then we can basically focus here on, just some of the highlights and the background you can get from this book. It's also been translated into different languages, so if you prefer to read it in Chinese or in Japanese, you can also do that. So that's the general format of the lecture, if we can get the technology working. So we start at 9, and then we have a break around 10, and then we have 2 guest speakers. And often, we go until 11:15 or so. We have the auditorium until 12 o'clock. Okay, so that's it. I would like to thank a lot of people that have been involved, in particular the participating sites from around the planet, the students for participating, technicians, that are helping us at the various locations. So we're going to have, it's going to be broadcast from Zurich, a few times from Zurich, but also from other locations, from Shanghai, from Madrid, from the United Kingdom. I would like to thank the guest speakers for having agreed to participate here, the sponsors, and of course our man Nathan, the chief organizer of the ShanghAI Lectures, and many others. And now I would like to pass the floor, here, Nathan, he's a researcher at the Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, organizer, and the brain behind the lecture series. He's, by the way, also fluent in Chinese. He speaks fluently Chinese. And he is an expert on distant teaching and presence technology. And I would now like to pass the floor. This project, this new type of robot, Pascal, had to leave, so we're going to postpone that to next week. And so I would like to pass the floor to Nathan, hoping that everybody can, maybe you come here, I give you the microphone.
Yeah, thank you, Rolf. Thanks for the introduction, and also from my side, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Also, I'm very sorry about the delay, but this is the first lecture, and last week when we had the general rehearsal scheduled, we couldn't actually do that because we didn't get the lecture hall. So we had to improvise a lot today, but I think now everything is on track. So you already heard a bit what the ShanghAI Lectures are. It's a global lecture series that's held via video conferencing. Every week we have Rolf's class, and then we have a number of very, very interesting guest speakers. And as students, you have the chance or the obligation to participate in the exercises, which will be done mostly in teamwork. So you will be working with students from other sites and learn more about AI and robotics and embodied intelligence. And there are going to be 2 hopefully exciting and fun competitions, including with the robots, that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So this is now the 4th year we are doing the ShanghAI Lectures. Actually, the AI Lab is started in 2003 with a lecture series from Tokyo. Then we had AI Days connecting about 13 sites around the globe. And then since 2009, we've been doing the ShanghAI Lectures with roughly 15 sites in the video conferencing every week. The participating sites. So I don't know if you can see the names, but in yellow, these are the sites that are connected every week in the video conference. The names in pink are those that participate this year. So there's 15 universities: Searle, Karlsruhe, Madrid, Algiers, Zurich, Berlin, Budapest, Moscow, Abu Dhabi, Xi'an, Shanghai, Suwon, Chiba, Osaka, and Launceston in Australia. So see, it's quite a big participating crowd. And then you have guest lectures from additional sites. You see also some sites in the US. So these lectures, they will get up at 2 in the morning, or maybe they don't even go to bed. So because of the time difference, they will give a talk at 2 or 3 in the morning. And yeah, so we see it's really a global project, and the technology, as we just experienced, is not quite simple. Rolf said that video conferencing has been around for some time, but every year we do the ShanghAI Lectures, there are going to be new problems. Usually we are able to solve all of them, and let's touch wood that for the remaining 9 lectures we have a working technology. Just as a very, very simplified overview on the slide, you see there are basically 3 different connection types. In red, you see the video conference, that's this picture here. And then we have in green the screen sharing, which are the slides that you see on your right or your left, depending on the setup in your lecture hall. And in the background, we have a text chat, which is here in purple. We use that to communicate with the other sides to make sure everything is working, or if you have a problem, we can discuss that without interrupting the video conference. So there's many connections, many things that can go wrong, but I think for now we have everything under control. Now about the lectures, Rolf already mentioned that in the first hour he's going to give his introduction to AI, and in the second hour we have 2 guest lectures. And we kindly ask you to prepare for these guest talks. So about a week in advance, we will publish an abstract and some papers that you are kindly asked to read. And then you can also prepare some interesting questions for the lecturers. The idea is that you can start discussing with the lecturers from all over the world about their topics. So, for example, in a few hours, we will publish the abstract from next week's guest lectures, and then please read that and look at the papers, and maybe you can already think of some interesting questions you want to ask the guest speakers. Now, the website is something very important. Since last year, we have a new website, shangailectures.org, where you can register, and since about an hour ago, registration is open for students. So if you're a student and you need or want to participate in the exercises, please register as a student. You have the option when you click on register as a new person. And then you will be assigned automatically to a group of other students, and you will get your exercises, assignments, etc. online. You can also chat with your colleagues. There's a chat function built in the website. We have discussion groups where you can talk about various topics, such as different robots or the lectures themselves. You can send messages to each other, and you can share links, etc. Now, maybe some of you have already registered before today. If you have done so, please send an email to me or to info@shangailectures.org so we can set you to a student, because if you don't register as a student, you cannot participate in the exercises. Also, if you have registered at your local university, for example at ETH University, please also register in the website, because we don't have access to the local universities' registration systems. So we need you to register on the ShanghAI Lectures regardless of any registrations done at your local university. The exercises are partly theoretical, partly practical, using a robot simulator. You will get the first exercise in about 1 week, which is a multiple choice question exercise for self-checking so that you understand some basic terms. And in 2 weeks from now, we start with the real exercises, which will be done in groups of 3 to 5 students. You will get the assignment online, and you will work together with your group. So it's actually meant to get to know each other and exchange some messages with each other. So please work in the team. Don't just do it by your own. And if you're in a team that you don't like, you can also vote to leave the team in the end. So if you're not happy with your group, then you can change the group for the next exercise. You have about 10 days per exercise, which should be more than enough to solve it. Maybe you need 2 to 3 hours per week to work on that. And if you're a team, you can distribute the task. when you log in and you get an exercise, you see this page on the top, on the left side, you see the tutor who is responsible for you. So this person will assign you some questions and also rate your suggestions or your solutions. Then you will see the other members of your team, and you can vote, you can submit your assignment. Please note the deadline, which is also published on the exercise sheet. And you can also see your points that you have achieved. So, for example, in Zurich, students, they need to achieve 50% or more of the exercise points in order to be admitted to the final exam. At other universities, there may be different systems in place, but make sure that you work together, and then you can easily achieve the number of points required for passing the class. Now, the simulation will be done using a software called VBots, which is sponsored by the company Cyberbotics. So every student who registers for the ShanghAI Lectures gets a free license during the whole semester to use VBots with your email address. So when you register for the ShanghAI Lectures website, we will send your email to Cyberbotics, and then you will get a pro license, which is valid for 4 or 5 months. You can already now download the trial license from cyberbotics.com. If you do so and you register, please use the email address that you will use for the ShanghAI Lectures, so we can match these. There's also intensive documentation that you might want to read, and the first exercise starts on 11th of October. And now to the competitions. We have 2 robot competitions. One is supported by Aldebaran Robotics. We use the humanoid robot Now in simulation, and in some universities also in a physical instance. So Tobias Klauser, who's one of the assistants here in Zurich, is behind this exercise, and you will hear more about that soon. And then we have another competition, which is based on the Embed IT or Embedded toolkit developed by Dorit Assaf. And this is quite the opposite to the Now. You see, the Now is like a fully fledged humanoid robot, and the embedded kit is basically a glue gun, glue sticks, duct tape, and cable binders. So it's also very interesting to see these 2 ends of the spectrum of robotics. And Now exercise will start in the last week of October, and embedded exercise will begin in early November. So every university gets one embedded kit, and then they can organize it locally, who's going to work on which competition. And in the last lecture on 13th of December, we have a small award ceremony of the winning teams. The ShanghAI Lectures wouldn't be possible without collaboration and sponsors, so I have to thank Switch for making sure that the infrastructure works, like the video conferencing, the screen sharing, and the recording are all done by Switch. Then we get VBots licenses from Cyberbotics. Also, Aldebaran is helping out with the Now competition. We have Involve, who support the chat function on our website. Then we have Hassler Stiftung, Landesverwaltung Liechtenstein, and a lot of other companies and institutions supporting the ShanghAI Lectures financially. Also, Seed Studio, they support the embedded competition. So these are some of the companies and institutions, but the team is much, much larger. I would like to thank Tobias Klauser, Dorit Assaf, Chao Tien, and Chao Shangyu, my colleagues here in Zurich, to work with the exercises. Special thanks to Mark Sulzer from university, who's helping with the installation here in Zurich and the video conferencing. And of course, all the tutors and technicians all over the world who help us make this possible. And I want to thank you for your interest, and I hope you have fun and enjoy the lectures. Thank you.
Okay. Working, yep. Good, thanks very much, Nathan, for the introduction. Do you have, are there questions now about the sort of organization, the technical setup, and how it's going to work? You can also, of course, post your questions electronically on the website. That's always an option. Okay, but for now, I would like to start with the actual content. We're a little behind schedule, but I think that's quite okay. So lecture 1 is going to be, I think Pascal already started, the discussion, what is intelligence, what is it, and how can it be studied? What is intelligence, natural and artificial intelligence? I would like to also communicate some of the conceptual and technical know-how, and I would like to have you an informed opinion on media coverage, and I think I would also like to show you that things can always be seen differently. Now, we all have our prejudices, so, I mean, not only you, but me too, I can see that in my everyday work, and we think it has to be that way, it can't be, how could it possibly be different? For example, we all believe that I have a conscious intention. Let's say I hold up my finger like that, and then I have the intention to bend the finger. So first I have the intention, and then I bend the finger. It has to be that way, right? Now there are actually experiments demonstrating that it's the other way around. That basically the brain activity for bending the finger starts before I have the conscious intention of actually bending the finger. So maybe it's just completely different than we would have thought. And I think with many things that we will hear during the semester, it will be like that. And this is also to get you to think, just always think, maybe it could be different as well. And there's never only one way of looking at things. Okay, now the media reports, I already started with that. Media reports. So basically, there is, HAL, the assistive limb cyberdyne. So it's basically, this can be either for people who have problems with their muscle strength, to support them, or it can be with people in factories who have to lift heavy things and can support them, so that it's very easy for them to lift things. So this is an assistive limb, this particular one by Cyberdyne. It's still a bit clumsy, at the moment, but maybe in the future it's going to change. There's also reports about that soon, like in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, we will be able to marry robots. So, and we can have sex with robots. I mean, that's, pretty obvious that we can have, if you look at the sex toy industry, it's pretty obvious that, of course, they will also get into robotics. One that I like very much is actually this one here, the Enki robot that was developed in Korea. And in Korea, like in other countries, English language teaching is a problem, and this is to support English language teaching. And correct me, Korea, correct me if this is not true, but it seems, there is a media report here, there is a media report that in 2013, a number of these robots are going to be deployed in schools to gain first experience. I guess the idea is not to replace the teachers, but to support the teachers, but I think it would, in any case, be a very interesting experience. It was developed by KISS, the Korean Institute for Science and Technology. So I think we can look forward to some interesting stuff. So now here, this was announced last week, so this is very new in the media. The new factory humanoid robot Baxter, developed by Rethink Robotics. So over here, you see this guy here. This is Rodney Brooks. He's probably one of the most famous roboticists in the world, and he is CTO of Rethink Robotics, that put this robot out there. And I mean, this was just announced last week, so you can look at some of these links here. We will put the slides, we will upload the slides right after the lecture. I think Nathan is going to upload the slides so you can look at them. So there's enormous media coverage, and modest as Rodney Brooks always is, he says this is the beginning of a new industrial revolution, right? And I think there are some really interesting developments in there. So no programming. So basically you have learning by demonstration. Rather than having to program the robot, you just show the robot what it should be doing, and then the robot will just copy your movements. It's highly flexible, versatile. So within about, one of the big problems in manufacturing is the reprogramming robots. Now, in some cases, for example, I was told in the shoe industry, for example, they have very small lot sizes, typically on the order of maybe 6 to 10 pairs of one particular type and one particular size. And so they have to be able to change the setup very quickly. And here, within minutes, you basically can change the setup. Should be affordable, I think on the order of maybe 30 to 50,000 euros, something like that. So you don't need big installations. So they can also be used for SMEs. They have a certain common sense, between quotation marks, that they can understand to some extent the situation. If something goes wrong or so, I think they have any. And the goal is that some of what companies have been doing now is outsourcing their production to cheap labor countries. For example, the iPhone and the iPad is produced by a company called Foxconn in China, mostly with manual labor, so human labor. Now, if Apple could, obviously at the moment it's cheaper for Apple to do that. Now, because they have been outsourcing these tasks to cheap labor country, they have lost millions and millions of jobs in industry. Now the idea is, with this robot Baxter, to re-insource some of these tasks, to the United States, but also to Europe. I think this could be a really interesting development. Now, we're going to have next year in March, so when this class is already finished, but I hope that you will remain interested in the field, we're going to have this exhibition, Robots on Tours, at the beginning of March in Pulse 5, not at the university, near Technopark. And we're going to have on display, so you can then really look at the Enki robot here, the English teacher, and you can also look at the Baxter humanoid factory robot. So you're, of course, invited to look at the website and to participate in the exhibition. Okay, now things can always be seen differently. Yes, okay, this I already mentioned. This is the book for the class in different languages, if you like. There is also a short version. This can be complemented. There's an older book called Understanding Intelligence, which is more technical and also more pages. It has like 700 pages. I don't know if you want to read that, but it's very, very interesting. So I can really recommend the book. There is also a paperback version of it available. Okay. So much for the introduction and what we're going to do. Now, today's topic, we would like to characterize intelligence, which is what you already started with Pascal. We will look at measuring intelligence, is something intelligent, not intelligent, Turing Test and Chinese room experiment, intelligence testing, IQ, and then a bit of goals of artificial intelligence and how we can study artificial intelligence. Now, let me say something. Whenever you have a question, then please, just raise your hands. I would like to have this a bit interactive. I mean, and also, when there are questions for other sites, let me know. Now, what we will be doing in the future, next week, starting this or next week, I will be asking various questions to various sites beforehand. so that they can prepare a little bit and, make statements from their sites. What I will also do, I will ask, what we're also going to have is student presentations. So at the beginning, typically at the beginning, or we're going to have a student presentation from one of the sites, for example, Xi'an or Shanghai or Berlin, Karlsruhe, on a particular topic. So at the end of the lecture, I will always ask for volunteers and then let me know, well, here in Zurich, of course, but also, for all the other sites, let me know whether a student in your site would like to make a presentation. I think it's an excellent exercise. You have a global audience. You can talk to the entire world. So I think it's a very exciting way of practicing your presentation skills. Okay, now we started that characterizing intelligence. What is intelligence? We said, okay, that learning is an important characteristic. I don't think that we can actually come up with a definition and say, they're the necessary and sufficient criteria of intelligence. I mean, intelligence is not a mathematical concept. So we can try to characterize it. I don't think we can actually come up with a definition. So let's just talk a little bit about that. So I think someone had sort of solving problems in different environments, or what was I think the different environments was... Yeah. Okay, let's say solving problems in wide range of environments, okay? I think that's, corresponds to one of the definitions that you can also find on the internet. So what else would we have? I mean, that also goes for the other sites. If you have a statement on, what you think is involved, can you characterize intelligence? Yeah, do we have maybe? So I have one. What about language? Right, definitely, humans have language, which is definitely an important characteristic of intelligence. What else? There are famous computer programs that can do that very well. It's playing chess, huh? Playing chess. What else? What else do we have? Oops.
So if anyone at the other sides has an idea, just open your microphone and talk, please.
Yep. What else do we have?
Here from Madrid, we have a student who wants to contribute.
Okay, very good. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hello, do you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you very well.
Well, the way the intelligence is the way you react of your environment. How do you take information about it and how you react with this information?
Okay. Extracting, let me say, and processing information from the environment, huh? From environment, is that okay? So basically, how do you learn something about the environment? I mean, I think maybe it goes together a bit with the learning. Environment, yeah, I think that's a good one. Okay, do we have others?
We have got one from Tasmania.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Emotional intelligence and also the ability to make leaps.
Emotional intelligence and the ability?
Ability to make leaps of logic. Yeah.
To make? I didn't quite get that.
Leaps.
Leaps.
Multi-stepped jumps.
Aha, yeah, okay, leaps. Leaps, so basically you are so non-logical steps or non-logical, right? So it's not only logical reasoning. That's what you're trying to say, but it goes in the direction maybe of intuition. Is that right?
More to do with like what makes a good programmer is someone who doesn't only follow steps, but makes leaps in logic, drawing from
okay, so very
seemingly
fast, fast, what can I say, reasoning or thinking?
based on seemingly unrelated areas.
Yeah, fast reasoning, leaps. Oh, connecting.
Yeah, connecting.
Seemingly. Oh, that's a good point, yeah. Seemingly unrelated. Unrelated points, yeah.
Areas? Yeah.
Okay, I think it's, let me say e.g. in programming, right? Yeah, I think that's a good one.
There is one more, that's cognitive intelligence.
What kind of intelligence?
Cognitive.
Cognitive intelligence?
Cognitive intelligence.
So that's more to do with, that would be more with logical reasoning, or what do you mean by cognitive intelligence?
Like object recognition. There's something like you recognize the object based on some characteristics and piece. Yeah.
Okay, can I write perception, for example?
Yeah.
Perception, which goes together, by the way, with memory. And memory, of course, goes together with learning, right? Yes? Do we have another statement? Reasoning? Reasoning about reasoning. Okay, so that's kind of a meta level. So reasoning about reasoning, that's an interesting one, yes? So I basically can inspect my own thought processes. Yes, okay, yeah, we have another statement there. Creativity, yes, that's what I've been waiting for. Creativity. Can computers or robots be creative, right? We will discuss that topic later on, and my answer is going to be yes, of course, right? Okay, I think that's probably enough for the moment. Yeah, thank you for the discussion and for the statements. So we've had statements, as you saw, from all over the world. Now, many people have tried to come up with a definition. Now, I took this from the Penguin Dictionary of Psychology. Few concepts in psychology have received more devoted attention, and few have resisted clarification so thoroughly. So, I mean, it's a fascinating concept. And by the way, you know, it's also in our societies, it's extremely highly valued. So basically, you can say about someone's, I don't know whether you know people who have children, but you can say to the parents everything you want about the child. You know, you can say, well, it's cheeky, it's lazy, you know, it's I don't know. You can say many bad things, but never ever say that he or she is not intelligent. That's the biggest insult you can. And so I think it's, you know, it's really a highly valued concept, but it's very hard to really come by. Now here is from 1927 Psychology Journal of Educational Psychology. They asked some of the leading psychologists at the time to come up with definitions. And here you could see how they were struggling to come up with definitions. Now, one of my favorite ones is actually this one here. So the ability to adapt oneself adequately to relatively new situations in life. Now, this is a definition. What are relatively new situations in life? I mean, so you see they were really struggling, but I think one of the points that comes up here, obviously to do with learning, then here we have also biological concepts, you know. I mean, many of these, or a couple of these, have already been said. There's also this, some people think this is very important. But, you know, there's a wide variety of definitions. There is also a website, or used to be, now it's, apparently I looked at it, wanted to look at it yesterday, it's down now. But there is with 70 definitions of intelligence, but now there's a paper that came out of this website, which is, we'll put it on the website. It's with 70 definitions. And Robert Sternberg, one of the leading people in psychology, who wrote this book, Beyond the IQ, he said, well, there seem to be almost as many definitions of intelligence as there were experts asked to define it. So everybody has basically his or her own definition of intelligence, and I think that's okay. I mean, maybe we don't need to worry so much. And then they go on, and then they try to define, they come up with their own definition. You know, intelligence measures an agent's ability to achieve goals in a wide range of environments. There you have your wide range of environments. So, but, you know, you can go on, and, you know, you can say, well, it's plausible, you know, but maybe it doesn't capture everything. And maybe it, you know, what you think is intelligence also depends on your subjective expectations. Let me give you an example. So, I mean, I can play chess. I don't know who can play chess. Is chess still something that people play? Yeah, okay, quite a few, huh? So I can play chess, but I'm a very mediocre chess player. And so if you were to observe me playing a game of chess, you wouldn't be very convinced by my level of intelligence. However, if you took a baby girl, you know, 1-year-old girl, and the girl would make exactly the same moves that I did in this game of chess, so the behavior is identical, you would probably think this girl is enormously intelligent, right? Even though the behavior is the same. And now if you replace the girl by a dog, you would think the dog is a genius, right? So it's not only the behavior. So if you just look at the behavior, maybe in one case you don't think it's very intelligent, in another case you really think it's intelligent. So it's going to be hard to agree on it. Necessary and sufficient conditions, we can probably forget. And then, you know, we can say, well, are robots or ants or humans intelligent? And let me just ask the question now, are ants intelligent? Now, the problem is you can give arguments in favor of that, and you can give arguments against. So what would be arguments in favor of looking at ants as intelligent beings? Maybe this can go to the global lecture hall. Can we have some statements on why ants might be, let's say, pros? Some pros? Yeah. Yes. They have actually quite sophisticated learning skills. They can learn paths, you know, landmarks. So yes, biologists have done very interesting experiments on these learning abilities. So what else do we have?
They can survive in the real world.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good one. It's a good one. I mean, for that's survive in real world. I think it's a good one. Also, of course, it applies to bacteria, but, you know, you know, if you look at bacteria, you know, they survive everywhere. They're extremely successful species. Okay, so let me put that. I mean, survival in itself, if you put in a wide range of environments, maybe then, you know, it comes to it. Yeah, what else? I mean, what do ants do also very often? And that's going to be, huh?
Maybe one ant is not very intelligent by itself, but they show collective intelligence.
Collective intelligence. Yes, we will talk specifically about collective intelligence. You know, and let me just put here cooperation. I think it's a very good point. You know, cooperation is really a sign of intelligence. I mean, if you look at our societies, we would not have any of our artifacts like a mobile phone or cars or books or anything if we didn't cooperate in extremely sophisticated ways. So ants can cooperate in quite sophisticated ways. They have communication abilities, which can also be relatively sophisticated, and they can form complex societies. They have very complex organizations of their societies. So there are many reasons why we might want to think of ants as intelligent beings. Okay, now let's look at the cons. Why would it not make sense to look at ants as intelligent beings? So they have limited, among other things, limited neural plasticity. You know, if you look at mammals, you know, neural plasticity is much higher. Then, what about language? We assume, you know, that they don't have language, or if they do, you know, it's a very limited kind of language. What else? What is also a sign of intelligence? Yes? Culture? Okay. Culture, yes. Culture, you could say, well, you know, there's some ant culture in these ant societies, but yes. So in the sense that we actually produce artifacts. So artifacts, they don't really produce sophisticated artifacts. And tool use, you know, they don't produce and use tools. And that's also definitely, we could have added that bit with the criteria on or characteristics of intelligent behavior. And then let me just put a last one, which is abstract problem solving. So they don't do math. Ants don't do math, right? So maybe they're not so intelligent. So there are, and then are ants now intelligent or not? Well, it depends on what you're interested in, right? So you could say, well, they are intelligent or they're not intelligent. There are pros and cons. So I think it's maybe a more productive question to say, well, given a particular behavior of interest, irrespective of whether you want to call that behavior intelligent or not, how does it come about? What are the mechanisms underlying this behavior, right? How does it come about? So I think this is the productive question. And now what I would like to do is show you two videos. You know, what we often do when we want to judge whether we consider something intelligent, we look at the behavior, we observe the behavior. I mean, that's, I think, one of the best criteria. We observe the behavior, and then, you know, we discuss, you know, more or less intelligence. And it's never the case that something is intelligent or not. This has evolved over millions. Intelligence, what we now call intelligence or thinking or cognition, has evolved in evolutionary history over millions of years. And, you know, it's been increasing gradually. So you can't say intelligent, not intelligence. It's a gradual characteristic. So let's have the Robo-Bee video.
この研究所の石黒博さんたちが立つも大きなテーマです。人と友達になれるロボットを目指して開発されたロボビー。
Maybe we can turn down the.
この研究所の石黒博さんたちが研究を進めているものです。ロボビーは言葉を交わしたり体に触れ合うことで人とコミュニケーションが取れるように設計されています。腕や腹など16箇所にある銀色のシートは感圧センサーです。人の皮膚に当たり触ると敏感に反応します。相手からの働きかけに対し800通りの行動パターンを自分で判断して返します。センサーを撫でられたり優しい言葉をかけられると人に甘える仕草も見せます。 しかし実社会に出してみるとまだ課題が山積みであることが分かってきました。小学校でロボビーに英語を話させ、海外からの転校生として子どもたちと友達になれるか観察しました。あちこちのセンサーを触られ、複数の子どもから話しかけられたロボビーは誰と話していいか分からず混乱してしまったのです。
Okay, okay. So this is in a Japanese school. Now we could discuss, whether this behavior of this robot, we want to consider that as particularly intelligent. But let me show you another video, and then maybe we can discuss what you observe in this video. And I think it's something very interesting. So can we have the ICAB attention video, Nathan? Oops. Okay, yes. So this is a robot that's become very popular, humanoid robot. Now look at this. Look at its behavior. Okay, maybe that's enough. Thank you, Nathan. So, I mean, what is the robot doing basically in this video? What's the main thing that the robot is doing? Yes, here. That's right. So it's basically, let's see, maybe we can turn up the lights. So basically, it's looking at people, it's sort of focusing its attention on various things, typically on people or some object that people are manipulating. And now if you see that, or if a robot like that, and at this exhibition then in next March you can look at these robots, when a robot looks at you, even if you know that the robot is a machine, it's just a machine, if the robot sort of looks at you, you really get the impression, it's sort of a funny feeling, right? And here we also got, this behavior to us looks relatively intelligent, because it's focusing its attention on the right sorts of things, just like we would actually do that. Now, these are only very simple reflexes. And we will see as we go along that maybe much more of our behavior is actually driven by reflexes rather than abstract logical thinking. I think that's something we have to get used to. And I think because we're biological beings, that's a very good thing that this is the case. Okay, now let me continue for a bit. Some people like Alan Turing, whom you, of course, all know, especially if you're from... Who is from computer science here? So, okay, a lot of course, you're very familiar with Alan Turing. So, Alan Turing, by the way, here, this is Alan Turing, right? And, of course, he's known for his notion of computation. And, as being one of the inventors of digital computers. He was tired of all these discussions, people saying, well, is this intelligent? Are dogs intelligent? Are ants intelligent? Are they not intelligent? Is this machine intelligent? And then he said, okay, what we need is an empirical test. And then I apply this empirical test, and then I can say intelligent, not intelligent. This is what he wanted to have, and there was a famous paper that he wrote in the 1950s, so about 50 or 60 years ago, and this is called the Turing Test. So it's a kind of an imitation game. So who is familiar with the Turing Test? Yeah, oh, okay, some of you, right, some of you. So basically the original Turing Test was actually quite sophisticated. So there is an interrogator. So this is obviously the interrogator. And then we have a woman, B, and we have a man, A. And the interrogator can ask questions, and the woman has the task to help the interrogator. So basically wants to give, the right answers, saying, "Are you the woman?" And then, she would say yes. Iris, you can think about what would be good questions, and then you have the man who is supposed to confuse the interrogator. And then basically the interrogator has to come up with saying, Y is the woman and X is the man. And then if you replace one of these, let's say the woman, by a computer, and the interrogator is wrong and right, statistically the same number of times, then we can say that the computer is actually intelligent. So that's Turing's famous test. I think we should have maybe a student presentation indeed. You can read more about that on the internet. There is a lot of literature. Now, the question is, do you think the Turing test is a good test? And maybe we don't have time now because we're a bit behind schedule. You think it's a good test? There are some people like Searle, John Searle, philosopher, linguist and philosopher, John Searle, and he said, well, the Turing test is actually very stupid. It's a very bad test because it only gives us input and output. So basically, the interrogator asks something, and then there is a question coming back. But it doesn't say anything about what's going on internally inside the machine or the person. It's just input-output behavior, right? Now, if I'm a teacher, I'm also a teacher here, right? So if a teacher wants to find out whether someone is intelligent, well, what does he or she do? Ask questions, right? So basically, asking a question, getting an answer back. Okay, that's basically all teachers can do, So maybe this input-output is not so bad. But Searle is arguing that this is really a very poor thing. Maybe next week maybe you can think about the pros and cons of the Turing test. Maybe you can read about the Chinese room thought experiment, and then it will be nice next week to have a student presentation on the Chinese room experiment. And because it's about the Chinese room, I think it might be very appropriate to have a presentation from China, right? So maybe Xian, Dustin, are you there, Dustin? We can't hear you. So would one of your students be prepared to do a short 7-minute presentation on the Chinese room thought experiment? You can tell me later by email if the sound, and we can't hear you. It seems that the sound is not working. Okay, so we can do that maybe offline electronically. So I think Dustin, who is in charge, the professor at Xi'an, is asking his students whether they would want to do that. Okay, we'll do that later. Now, there are many variations on the Turing test. Maybe some of you have heard about this program, ELIZA, that Josef Weizenbaum did in the 1960s at MIT. Is anyone familiar with ELIZA? Yeah, okay, some of you know ELIZA. So it was basically a program, a very simple program you could interact with. And it was really extremely primitive. It would take a speech pattern or just a sentence pattern you had to type, and then, turn things around. So, for example, the program would ask the person, what made you come here? And said, well, I don't know, just feeling a bit tired. And then the program would take that just feeling a bit tired, turn this around and say, why do you think you feel a bit tired? And then the person immediately thinks, he or it or he understood me and asked this question. And it's a particular form of psychotherapy that you pick up the other person, sort of, this basically gets or evokes the feeling in the other person that he or she is actually understood by the computer program, even if it was just manipulating these sentence patterns. But very clever. It also demonstrates that we have a strong tendency to project our own thoughts and feelings into our environment, especially into computer programs and robots. It's a phenomenon called anthropomorphization. We'll come back to that later on. There is this movie, Blade Runner. Maybe it's a science fiction movie, I think about 20 years, 30 years back, already 30 years back, with replicants, sort of artificial creatures made by big companies that were sent out to space to do dangerous missions, and they were not allowed to be on Earth. But there were some that actually came back to Earth, and then these Blade Runners had the task to find them and to eliminate them. And they conducted, you can look at that as a kind of Turing test. So let's, not done. Can we have the Blade Runner video quickly? I mean, it's a very short video. Oh, can we make it louder? So this is a kind of Turing test. The interrogator trying to find out whether the other one is a human or an artificial creature.
Sit down.
Care if I talk? I'm kind of nervous when I take tests.
Please don't move.
Can we switch off these lights here?
Oh, sorry. I already had an IQ test this year. I don't think I've ever had one of these.
Reaction time is a factor in this, so please pay attention. Now answer as quickly as you can.
Sure.
1187 Hunterwasser.
That's the hotel.
What?
Where I lived.
Nice place?
Yeah, sure, I guess. Is that part of the test?
No. Just warming you up, that's all.
Huh. It's not fancy or anything.
You're in a desert, walking along in the sand when all of a sudden...
Is this the test now?
Yes. You're in a desert, walking along in the sand when all of a sudden you look
What one?
down... What?
What desert?
Doesn't make any difference what desert. It's completely hypothetical.
But how come I'd be there?
Maybe you're fed up. Maybe you want to be by yourself. Who knows? You look down and you see a tortoise, Leon. It's crawling towards you.
Tortoise? What's that?
You know what a turtle is?
Of course.
Same thing.
I've never seen a turtle. But I understand what you mean.
You reach down, you flip the tortoise over on its back, Leon.
Do you make up these questions, Mr. Holden? Or do they write them down for you?
The tortoise lays on its back, its belly baking in the hot sun, beating its legs, trying to turn itself over, but it can't. Not without your help. But you're not helping.
What do you mean I'm not helping?
I mean you're not helping. Why is that, Leon? They're just questions, Leon. In answer to your query, they're written down for me. it's a test designed to provoke an emotional response. Shall we continue? Describe in single words only the good things that come into your mind. About your mother?
My mother?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about my mother.
Okay. So this is, basically what's called the total Turing test. The other one with the interrogator, in Turing's test, is with language. And so this has been, a criticism of this test that it only works with language, so it wouldn't work with animals. Now, but here it's kind of the total Turing test, so the entire appearance is also human-like. And with his questions, this guy is trying to find out whether he's actually a human being or a robot. Now, we have another video where the idea is to see whether animals would actually recognize robots as, their own species. So basically, the animals, a Turing test for animals. Now, this is going to be a very short. It's with the Aibo robot. It's a very old robot, but I think it's an interesting video where we have a real dog versus a robot dog. So can we have the? It's very short. You have to watch this one. Okay. So whatever that means, but there are people who have tried to actually conduct Turing tests with animals. Okay, I think let me go through the rest relatively quickly and ask you to do some reading, and we'll upload the slides, go through the slides, and maybe next week we can have a discussion about these things so that we don't run too late. One way in which we can investigate intelligence is trying to measure intelligence, and obviously an obvious measure is the IQ test. And of course, I think you're all familiar with the IQ tests. And here I just have one of the problems that is typical for such IQ tests. How does it work? So you have these sequences of patterns. You have a sequence of patterns here, this, and then you have to choose, for this one, you have to choose among these which one it is. Okay, are there any suggestions from any of the sites which one it is? What would you say? Which one is the correct answer? Suggestions? Any suggestions?
F.
Huh? F?
F.
F, okay. Can you briefly explain why? It's correct, but why is it F?
These figures, it does not overlapping with each other.
That's right. Okay, so it's these kinds of questions that are typically asked, and there are, by the way, many different kinds of intelligence tests. Now, there are a number of important issues that I don't want to go through in detail, but just to give you an idea of some of the most important questions. We'll just finish in about 5 minutes, okay? Very crucial question. Is the IQ in the genes, or is it acquired during the development? That's of course, then if it's in the genes, then there are just the people who are intelligent, the others. So and then, schools and all these programs. So it's a very delicate issue, and political correctness is a big topic in this. And this is called the famous nature-nurture debate. Nature being the genes and nurture being, what you learn as you grow up. Another issue is, when you go to one of these tests, you have to take one of these tests. Can you practice and then get better marks on these tests? So is it trainable? Are there cultural differences? Are like black people more intelligent than white people? What about professional success? What about emotional intelligence? For example, we always say, you always read in these management articles and books that emotional intelligence is very important for professional success. And then at the same time they say, well, women typically have more emotional intelligence than men. Why then are there so few women in leading positions? So there are a lot of issues that we can think about. Now this one, let me just mention this one, professional success. You can look at the slides afterwards, but professional success. So I think I'm going to probably finish with the one on professional success. So there is an loose organization called the Mensa International. They have roughly 100,000 members, and it's people that score an IQ of 140 or above, which corresponds to the top 2% in this testing scheme, right? Now, sometimes people say, psychologists say, well, it's a good predictor for professional success. Now, if you look at the organization, there are some members, they are professionally very successful, and some members, they're professionally not successful. Well, why is that the case? Why could that be? And what I would like to do is, think about that for next week, and maybe we can also have a volunteer for student presentations. And since we have a psychology institution, social science, in Moscow, you think it would be okay for you, I think you did that last year, for one of your students to give a short presentation on what the reasons might be, why some people with a high IQ are professionally successful and others are not? Do you think that would be okay? Would one of your students be volunteering? You can tell me later, but...
I think we'll do the presentation.
Pardon me?
We'll do the presentation.
You do the presentation? Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Great, okay. So we already have the volunteer for this. And so the assignments for next week, I think the lecture will be on October the 4th, on cognition and computation. And please read chapters 1 and 2 in the book, How the Body Shapes the Way We Think, and we will distribute additional reading materials. So thank you very much for your attention, and stay tuned for lecture 2 next year. And again, my apologies for the technological glitches. We'll try to do our best to avoid them next week. So thank you very much for your attention, and bye-bye to everyone, to all the sites and to the students here locally, and thanks for participating. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, great.